Last month I visited Kennywood Amusement Park in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania. This was the first new park I visited in over a year, and I gotta say it definitely lived up to my high expectations. From the wide variety of attractions, to the classic amusement park feel, to the incredible food, seriously, those bacon cheddar potato patch fries must have descended from heaven. My visit to Kennywood was a resounding success. And of course, what would Kennywood be without its roller coasters? So as voted on by, well, myself, here are my top 8 Kennywood roller coasters. Number 8 is Little Phantom, a Molly coaster by American manufacturer Molina & Sons. This is a kiddie coaster, and that's pretty much all I have to say about it. It's great for kids, and it serves as the starting gate for young Pittsburgh coaster enthusiasts in the making. Moving on, number 7 is Exterminator, a spinning coaster by French manufacturer Reverchon. This is pretty much the same coaster as the Zamperla spinning Wild Mouse, a coaster I've ridden plenty of times. This one, however, is made by Reverchon and was built before the model was licensed by Zamperla. You can tell Reverchon was involved by the overhead lap bars that you pull down. As for the ride itself, it's definitely one of the more strongly themed spinning Wild Mouse coasters I've ridden. This theming includes the ride vehicles, Exterminator mannequins, a giant mock boiler, and more. This coaster is built entirely indoors, with most of the layout taking place in the dark. The fact that it takes place in the dark definitely adds to the ride's intensity, especially during the dips. I will say though, it didn't spin as much as other spinning Wild Mouse coasters I've ridden, which is good for me since I don't really like spinning, but it could make the ride less exciting for some. To be honest, the only thing I really didn't like about this ride was the queue. I don't mind waiting in line since it's pretty much what I do for a living. However, this line was in a concrete building with no air conditioning, and it was 95 degrees outside. This made the room especially hot, but at least one of the exit doors was left open to let fresh air in. Queue building aside, this is a pretty good ride, so ride it early to avoid the line. Number 6 is the Racer, a Mobius loop coaster by American manufacturer Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters Incorporated. Who doesn't love a classic racing wooden coaster? I just love the sense of friendly competition and the excitement of racing another train. That is to say, I admittedly have a soft spot for these coasters. What's really interesting about this one is that it's a Mobius loop coaster. This means that both sides of the track are connected in a single layout. In other words, you board on one side and get off on the other. According to RCDB, it is actually one of only 4 Mobius loop roller coasters operating in the world, and the only one in the United States, so it's a very unique coaster credit. Uniqueness aside, the ride itself is a pretty standard wooden coaster affair with dips, turns, and a few pops of airtime. Nothing super unique or intense, but it's a classic experience nonetheless. Overall, it's fun for all ages and a great fit in the park's lineup. Number 5 is Skyrocket, a Skyrocket 1 by American manufacturer Premier Rides. A lot of enthusiasts say this is one of the weaker launch roller coasters out there, and while it may not blow away seasoned thrill seekers, I thought it was a great ride for what it was. The coaster starts off with a 50-mile-per-hour LSM launch that leads directly into a large top hat. This top hat actually gave me some really nice airtime at the top, and the drop down from it really put a smile on my face. Afterwards, you'll navigate a super smooth cutback and zero-G roll, and I'm a sucker for zero-G rolls, so this was another highlight of the ride. Another part worth noting is the second drop straight down. You get some excellent airtime here, and it really did take me by surprise. This drop is followed by a fun corkscrew and a jubilant slalom section. While this part of the ride wasn't very intense, I still got a kick out of it. Yes, I love intense rides, but to me, if a roller coaster is fun, I still love it, even if it doesn't make my top 20. And really, that's the best way I can describe this coaster. Fun. Skyrocket is a great fit for the park's lineup, giving both variety and an overall solid ride experience. If you go to Kennywood, definitely give it a shot. Number 4, Jackrabbit, a classic wooden coaster designed by John A. Miller. This is the park's oldest roller coaster at over 100 years old. Believe it or not, this is widely considered to be the first roller coaster to use upstop wheels, which go under the track and allow for safe airtime. You could easily argue that if it wasn't for this coaster, we wouldn't have airtime at all. Now based on its age, you may expect this ride to be rough and rickety, but no, it isn't. This coaster has a nice vintage feel to it that you really don't get on other wooden coasters. The lap bar doesn't even touch your lap, and if it weren't for the seatbelts, I'm fairly certain that I would have went flying. With that being said, it almost felt like the seatbelt wasn't there. as the space you get between you and the lap bar allows for some incredible and quite frankly terrifying airtime moments. That double down drop into the ravine is especially thrilling, and I can safely say it deserves the acclaim it gets from longtime enthusiasts. Plus, it's got a tunnel, and I mean, who doesn't love tunnels on roller coasters? With its terrain, tunnel, airtime, and historical significance, Jackrabbit is a must-do at Kennywood. Number 3. Thunderbolt, a wooden coaster built by National Amusement Device Company. Now this coaster was a true crowd pleaser. Ordinarily, you can't ride this coaster as a single rider, which I'll explain why in a bit. Luckily though, there was a group of 3 people who needed someone else to ride with. After pointing out I was a single rider, the operators basically had me skip half the line so the third person could ride, which was pretty cool. Now onto the ride itself. Right off the bat, the ride starts with a sizable drop straight out of the station. It's not often I see rides that do this, but the terrain made this rare moment possible. For this drop and the others throughout the layout, sitting towards the back row made for a much more intense experience than I expected. The drop is soon followed by another terrain-based drop before the main chain lift. After this lift is the next part of the ride, and the reason no single riders are allowed. After reaching the peak, the train heads into a tilted drop that is directly followed up with a forceful turn. The lateral force of these turns will push you sideways, and if you're sitting on the right side of the train, you'll be pressed into the person on your left. This is why they need 2 people per row, to prevent someone from slamming into the side of the car. The rest of the layout takes you through the terrain once again, with 2 more adrenaline-filled dips before the ride ends. It was a tough choice between this coaster and Jackrabbit, but the longer layout and laterals put this over the edge for me. Like Jackrabbit, it's also very smooth for a wooden coaster of its age. To sum it all up, Thunderbolt is yet another roller coaster you can't miss at Kennywood. Number 2. Steel Curtain, a steel coaster by American manufacturer S&S Sansei. This coaster was a blast. Definitely one of those rides that put a dumb grin on my face. This coaster starts off strong by taking you 220 feet into the air, and the way the lift goes right between the supports is flat out surreal. Just as you're taking in the sheer size and scale of this coaster, you then hit a one-of-a-kind Drachenfire dive drop, which plummets you downwards. This drop is unlike others that I've been on, and it's arguably more disorienting than gut-busting. But hey, who said different was a bad thing? The ride has a record-breaking 9 inversions for an American coaster, and each one is perfectly placed in the layout. My personal favorite was the 0G stall, which just happens to be directly under an amazing airtime hill. Now, a lot of people have criticized the vibration on this ride as it navigates the course, and while I did notice it, I still had a great time riding this coaster, especially in the front row. How could I not love such a beefed up layout with so much in it? In a way, I could best describe it as a bowl of pasta primavera. Just like the variety of vegetables in that dish, Steel Curtain's large variety of elements make it both fresh and filling. And I highly recommend this coaster. Number 1. Phantom's Revenge, a hypercoaster by American manufacturers Aerodynamics and Morgan. This coaster actually first opened as an entirely different ride, originally called Steel Phantom. This Aerodynamics coaster once featured inversions. However, it was widely criticized for its roughness, and its popularity suffered greatly. But in 2001, this coaster reopened with an inversion-free layout, featuring a near-complete retracking by Morgan. You may think this ride wouldn't be as fun without the inversions, but let me tell you, I had high expectations for this ride, but even those were surpassed by just how awesome it was. I've ridden over 300 roller coasters, and I can safely say this is one of the best roller coasters I've ever been on, probably in my top 10. The first time I rode this was just like biting into a well-done chicken quesadilla from Taco Bell with onions, red strips, extra cheese, and chipotle sauce. Pure satisfaction. There's just so much to love about this coaster. Right off the first drop, you get a sense of how fast this coaster is, as you zoom downwards and upwards towards the second drop. And as if the first drop wasn't awesome enough, the second drop is even better. The second drop is actually taller than the first one, fully using the terrain to its advantage. After the second drop, this ride is just a non-stop barrage of speed and ejector airtime. The non-restrictive restraints allow for some serious out-of-your-seat moments throughout the layout. In fact, the airtime on this ride is so insane that you can actually see how crazy it is in this picture I took. Moreover, the overall intensity of this ride flat out blew me away. This coaster is so forceful, so exciting, and so epic that it's an absolute must-do at Kennywood. An absolute must-do. Yeah, I said it twice. Long live Phantom's Revenge. Did you agree with my list? Or did you disagree? Feel free to let me know how you'd rank these coasters in the comments below. Before we wrap things up, check out my merchandise shop for Theme Park Crazy merchandise. Take a photo wearing one of my shirts at a park, and feel free to send it to me at themeparkcrazy1992@gmail.com. Your photo may be featured on my Instagram page. Thank you all so much, and if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so, once again, at the link in the description. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can check out my website at themeparkcrazy.com. This is Theme Park Crazy, and I'll see you all next time.